You've tuned in to the Psychology of Black Womanhood podcast, the space where research is meeting the real world. I'm Dr. Dion Stevens, your host and co-author of the Psychology of Black Womanhood book, and I'm a professor of psychology. Mainstream mindfulness can sometimes feel detached, even exclusionary, when it doesn't reflect the daily truths of navigating racism, microaggressions, and generational traumas. What's needed is a mindfulness practice that not only acknowledges these realities, but actively honors the strength, resilience, and joy found within them. Enter Blackfullness, a groundbreaking mindfulness app designed with intention and cultural relevance. Blackfullness offers a space for individuals to reclaim rest, stillness, and self-awareness in ways that feel authentic and affirming. By centering Black experiences, Blackfullness bridges the gap between traditional mindfulness and true culturally responsive healing. Today's episode features the founder of Blackfullness, Dr. Natalie Watson-Singleton, a licensed clinical psychologist, associate professor of psychology at Spelman, and the Diversity and Inclusion Education Director with the NIA Project at Emory University. Dr. Watson-Singleton is also the owner of her own psychotherapy and consulting practice. What inspired you to create a mindfulness app that's specifically for the Black community?
So mindfulness is understood or defined as a particular way of paying attention to the present moment. So connecting to our thoughts, our emotions, our bodily sensations, and whatever else is present for us in a given moment. And I think a lot of people spend time thinking about the past or replaying what's already happened or worrying about the future. And mindfulness is that invitation to connect to the present moment. Mm-hmm. And I actually was exposed to mindfulness as a graduate student. And I was learning about all of the wonderful things that mindfulness could do in terms of reducing stress, improving blood pressure, improving sleep. And I was also studying health disparities in Black populations and noticed that here's this strategy that can reduce stress and stress-related disparities that negatively impact Black communities. But when I started teaching mindfulness, noticed that Black folks weren't showing up. Mm-hmm. And so I was really curious about what we could do about that. And so throughout a series of qualitative research studies that then led to the development of the app, it was important for me to not only develop culturally responsive mindfulness content, but then we needed to figure out how to make that content accessible. And an app was just a great way to increase access to that content.
I think it's important that we highlight the fact that you aren't just an app developer and you are a clinical psychologist, so you do have that therapeutic training, but you're also a researcher. You have a large body of research and you've also done lots of interventions. Why was it important for you to have that research background for developing this app, Blackfullness?
I think that's an excellent question. Although I knew that mindfulness from my own personal experience as a Black identified multiracial woman was important, I wanted to treat that like a hypothesis. Mm-hmm. I also felt that mindfulness's current packaging needed to be changed. And I also wanted to treat that like a hypothesis, meaning, yes, I have this hunch that this thing is important, but let's actually lean in and ask communities, is this something that you're interested in? And if so, what needs to be changed or what needs to be done to make this more appealing to increase engagement or more aligned with your lives? So that qualitative piece was so important for the content development. And then the quantitative research was so important to now, in some ways, kind of legitimize what I felt to be true, right? Like this thing could work, but to use that quantitative data and our rigorous methods to, again, further highlight, oh, yeah, engaging in this app does reduce stress. It does improve self-compassion. People report being better able to manage their emotions, but it also stimulates additional questions. Again, that is helpful in thinking about who's best served and least served by the experience.
So, as a researcher, do you think that you had a different lens or a different sort of positionality in how you approach developing this app?
Absolutely. I think one benefit of being a researcher is, we're just used to things taking time.
Right.
And so I think it was a great practice in patience and being patient with the process, which I think for a lot of maybe traditional app developers or business folks, you
Mhm.
just kind of create the thing quickly and put it out there, and you're just
Right.
constantly kind of tweaking as you go. Whereas for me, it was helpful to do a lot of work on the front end to even get clear about what the thing could look like and
Right.
continue to research in an ongoing way.
So, thinking about this, why do you think an app for mindfulness is so important for the Black community? Like, why is mindfulness something that people in the Black community should really sort of think about?
There's two things that I'll say. One is mindfulness is a strategy that improves both our emotional health and physical health. So it has multiple benefits, especially where we as researchers and people who are interested in health equity are looking at in terms of adverse health outcomes in Black communities, right? So if we're trying to improve diabetes, high blood pressure, but also high stress and like race-based trauma, like mindfulness touches all of those things because
Right.
of the way the different mechanisms involved in terms of its physiological implications, its cognitive implications, its emotional implications, and its behavioral implications. The other thing, just in terms of my own, again, I think socialization and lived experience as a Black woman, the thing that made me gravitate to mindfulness is that it provided an alternative to the socialization that I had originally received. Right?
Mm-hmm.
The socialization that I had originally received was work twice as hard, keep it moving, push through, don't let them see you sweat.
Right. Right.
And right, like all of those things
Right. Work twice as
that
hard. Right.
that have helped us survive, right?
Right.
That have gotten us through, that have allowed us to push through discrimination and negative stereotypes. Have served a purpose, but also I think have placed us at risk in some ways for certain health experiences and health outcomes. And so what mindfulness did is it provided me an alternative another way. That, yeah, your socialization as a Black woman says to keep it moving, but mindfulness says that I can actually pause. I
Right.
can actually attend to my experience. I can proceed mindfully. I could push through if I want to in this moment. And I can see what other options are available to me in this moment.
Can you expand a little bit more about some of the offline work you've done around mindfulness and accessibility?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I've really enjoyed doing is leading workshops with different communities in terms of how to bring mindfulness into their lives. And so, whether that's professors, teachers, members of different cultural or ethnic groups. And one resource that I had the opportunity to contribute a chapter to that I want to shout out for people who are interested in this topic is a book called Beyond White Mindfulness: Critical Perspectives on Racism, Wellbeing, and Liberation. So I have a chapter in there, but many other scholars have contributed to this book to really highlight the various ways that we can tailor and adapt mindfulness to meet the needs of various marginalized communities.
You already mentioned that Black community members are not engaging in mindfulness.
Yeah.
Why do you think there was this gap, particularly from your research findings?
So, if I think about some of the qualitative work that we did to first even ask Black folks if they were interested in mindfulness, and if they were, what kinds of things would need to be tweaked to increase engagement, one of the things that we found out is there was this perception that mindfulness and meditation were things that white folks did. It wasn't something for us, for our communities. And I think there was a way in which mindfulness was being packaged in the US that furthered that idea that it's the hippy dippy white person who does the thing, not us. Then I think there was the stigma of, okay, am I going to then engage in this thing that's not commonly practiced in our community? God forbid people in the community think that I've lost my way or I've gone on to the other side by engaging in these practices. And so that's a lot of what we heard about why people were hesitant to engage in it. But once we introduced mindfulness to them, there was interest and people had a lot of feedback about ways we could make that content more responsive and just more aligned with things that we already engage in our communities and then cultural values that are salient in our communities.
Did you have any pushback from people about centering Black voices in a wellness space, particularly online like this?
By and large, there's been a lot of support. I think some of the pushback kind of deep in the secularized, white-centric packaging of mindfulness in the US, there is this sense that mindfulness and the tenets of mindfulness can be universally experienced,
Right.
and that it's important to recognize suffering as a universal human experience that we all can make contact with. And I don't want to suggest that Black folks are the only folks who have experienced suffering, but we know that our suffering is undoubtedly shaped by experiences of racism, gendered racism, other types of intersectional oppression. And so it felt important to name those things. I think by and large there's been support, but I do think there were probably people who wondered, well, we know mindfulness works. Why do we have to tweak it? Why do we have to tailor it?
Exactly. What approach did you use to design an app that was really culturally resonant? Were there certain kinds of voices, sounds, or visuals that you had to apply to get to the feel that you wanted for an app that really reflects the Black community?
Yeah. The thing that was most important for me was really rooting the content and the experience of the app and in the app in the years of qualitative work that I had been doing with other colleagues.
Yeah.
So really leveraging community voices to inform the development of the app. And so the changes that we made were both those kind of surface level changes, such as making sure that all of the images that you see in the app are of Black folks, making sure that all of the practices are offered by either Black voice actors or actual Black mindfulness practitioners, because that was one of the things that we heard in our qualitative work, is that the last thing people wanted to do at the end of the day is come home and listen to a white voice tell them to close their eyes and relax. Like we have to listen to white folks tell us what to do all day, every day. The last thing I want to do when I'm trying to relax is have a white voice tell me something else. And then there were these deeper level changes, which included connecting our experiences to mindfulness. So, for example, there's a practice in the app, which is called Blackfullness, that is named I Can Breathe. And particularly calling the practice that, or naming it that, was in direct conversation with the protest mantras that we were hearing around I can't breathe. So what does it mean to be invited to notice our breath when so many of our community members are having their breath cut short by police brutality, by racism, by state-sanctioned violence? And so actually naming those experiences in the app.
Is there another culturally centered practice that you can think about?
Well, I would say all of our practices are culturally grounded, but you're right, there are these specific practices that call out unique experiences. And so I think the Black joy one is another one. I think our spirituality and divine centered practices, because those were something that our participants asked for, like recognizing that for a lot of us, spirituality, even though spirituality looks a variety of different ways, it's something that is salient for a lot of Black folks. And so, how do we invite our spiritual practices into our mindfulness practices?
One of the things that your app also does is promote joy. It's
Yes.
not just about healing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah. It's important to know that one, there's not just one Black community, there's not just one Black
Absolutely.
experience, but that our experiences are varied. And that our experiences aren't just rooted in oppression and struggle, that there is joy, there is creativity, there is love, there is peace, there is spirituality and connection to others that also shapes our experiences. And so we do have a guided practice that focuses on joy. We have a guided practice that focuses on safety and what it's like to feel safe in our own bodies. A practice that is rooted in nurturing care toward ourselves, but also those that we are in community with. And so it was really important for us to have content that spoke to the diversity of our experiences.
Some of our listeners are not Black women or men.
Yeah.
What would you think it'll be like for them to use your app?
How we talk about the app is we are unapologetic that our app centers the experiences of Black folks.
Mhm.
And we also say that we're not exclusionary. So I think that we have listeners and people who download the app and use the app on a consistent basis who aren't Black, but
Mhm.
who feel, I think, a connection to the app, who just really appreciate a mindfulness experience that situates their lives in a broader context.
Mhm.
And so, and then I think just having opportunity to engage in the educational videos to learn more about what mindfulness has to offer in terms of how we practice it on our day-to-day life. And so you do not have to be Black to use the app, to download the
Mhm.
app, and we are clear that we center the experiences of Black folks all up and through the app.
How do you make sure that your app is really something that people can engage in long term and recognize this is an important part of their overall wellness? And it doesn't just fall into being another one of these self-care trends or looked at that way.
So the app includes actual practices, and it also includes educational videos. So there are videos that walk people through what stress is, how it shows up in our body, what are our emotions and our thoughts. And so part of the education reflected in those educational videos is the importance of prioritizing our health and prioritizing our health in a sustainable and ongoing way, especially if we're thinking about having this kind of sustained wellness practice, not only for ourselves, but for our community. Like why it's important that we're here for the long haul.
Do you think your app will contribute to broader community discussions around wellness, particularly mental health wellness in Black communities?
I think it definitely can. One of the things that I really appreciate about Blackfullness, the app, but also the experience, is that we are thinking strategically about how to grow this wellness experience. And so I really want to shout out our dissemination partners, David Walker and Sonia Russell, who have created this experience called the Blackfullness Lounge, which is this pop-up wellness experience that's nested in communities where
Mm,
they're facilitating conversations about health and wellness and how do we make space for our health and wellness. And also seeing mindfulness not just as this extra thing
right.
that we can do, but that this thing that many of us have been doing already, we just weren't calling it mindfulness. And so, how do we do more of that to sustain ourselves, to sustain our families, and to sustain our communities?
I like that you brought up this point that it's not just the online piece, that there's this real on the ground community piece. What are you learning from that in terms of how it informs how you approach the app or things that you have to think about more broadly?
I think there are a couple of things that are standing out. One is just the power of human connection and the human touch, which is especially important in this tech space, digital health space, AI space,
Absolutely.
that you can create the app, but especially I think still in our communities, for people to engage with the app, there has to be this like connection to the
Mm-hmm.
experience first. And so when we're able to engage people in person and kind of walk them through the app experience, but also guide them in discussions, they are more likely to then engage with the app in an ongoing way and have this connection to the experience. And so it really speaks again to the power of human connection, to community, and building a community experience, which for me as a psychologist and researcher, I see the app or any kind of digital health tool as really a complement or a supplement, right? Not a replacement
Mm-hmm.
for, again, a lot of the things that we get out of the connection and community.
You brought up the fact that it's important to have this touch and connectivity in particularly this time of when things seem to be online and we don't know what's real or fake often.
Yeah.
So why do you think representation, particularly in wellness spaces like this, is so important, particularly in tech-driven tools like apps?
One of the things that comes to mind if I think about the importance of connection is it's also important for our community to know that it was created for us by us,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
That these we didn't just take the thing and put it in some AI chat box and tell it to sound like a Black person, but that these were actual Black folks who recorded the
Exactly.
practices, who created the practices based on their lived experiences, and that Black folks, Black researchers studied its effectiveness, and Black community partners and dissemination partners are the ones keeping it going. So I think that that means something to a lot of people.
What kinds of responses have you gotten so far? Any interesting stories or feedback so far from doing this?
My my general sense is that people love it and really appreciate it. And one
Mm,
of the things that I've heard time and time again is that people feel the difference. I think especially in like research spaces or in
right.
academic spaces, so many things are called culturally responsive.
Mm-hmm.
And then you realize, oh, okay, there was maybe like a tweak here or a tweak there. But people have said, when we've gotten to the app, it was like, no, this felt different. Like this felt like it was, again, for us,
Mm-hmm.
by us. The other thing that I've heard about, and because one of the things that happens in the conversations with apps and digital health tools is that people don't use them in an ongoing way.
Right.
And I think that that's a reasonable concern or consideration. But one of the things that I'll hear is that people will talk about engaging with the app,
Mm.
learning about the different practices, and then find themselves incorporating those different practices without even opening up the app. So they'll say things like, oh, I remember that one practice that invited me to pay attention
Right.
to my surroundings or to pay attention, the next time that I'm taking a walk. And I notice that the more that I walk, from my car to my office, that I'm taking in the sounds around me, the sights around me, the smells around me. Well, you don't need an app to do that. And
Right.
so and I think that that means a lot to me that people are taking ownership of their own health and wellness and experience and bringing that present focused attention into all of their activities, regardless of whether or not they open up a 5-minute practice or not.
What's next for the app? Like, are there upcoming features? Are you going to expand your audience? Are you thinking about new content?
Yeah, so we're in the process of updating our content. And so we've been intentional about adding content more and more on a monthly basis to, again, extend the offerings available. The
Mm-hmm.
Blackfullness Lounge, which is this human high touch experience that we've been doing and pop ups, particularly in the Bay Area, but also across the nation, The other thing that we've been doing is partnering with other academic institutions and Black researchers to further understand who's best served and least served by the app.
Mm,
Again, we know that Black folks are not a monolith. And
right.
so, does the app work for different segments of our population? So, if I think about Black queer men and Black queer women, Black queer individuals, if I think about Black individuals with intense symptomatology, right? So, one of
Hmm.
the things that I do as a clinical psychologist is work with Black folks who've experienced chronic suicidality. Is the app a good resource for them? What about Black youth? And so it's been exciting to partner with others to really extend the research as well, because one of the things that I care about is making sure that our communities also have access to
Hmm.
resources that are backed by the science. I
Yes.
feel like it is my responsibility to offer our communities the best of what we have to offer. And so continuing to use the science to improve the experience so that everybody is served well.
So you've got me excited now. So how do I get the app? What's the steps for finding it and getting on board and starting to get engaged with it?
Yeah, so the app is available for free currently.
Hmm.
So wherever you get your apps. So it's Blackfullness, that's BLACKFULL, so fullness.
Right.
So a play on mindfulness, but again, full of the Black experience within our mindfulness app.
We were just talking with Dr. Natalie Watson-Singleton as she shared insights from her research on mindfulness and how it informed the development of the Blackfullness app. To explore more of Dr. Watson-Singleton's work, including her Blackfullness app, mindfulness research, community initiatives, and social media connections, visit this page on the Psychology of Black Womanhood website. We're so glad you tuned in, and we hope these conversations spark new thoughts and ideas. The insights from guests like today really help bring everything to life, and we hope you've walked away with something meaningful. Your support is what keeps this work going. When you share the podcast, leave a review, or recommend it to someone in your circle, you help amplify voices and stories that matter. And don't forget to grab a copy of your book, The Psychology of Black Womanhood. It's an essential companion to the podcast, perfect for personal reflection, classroom use, or community conversations. Again, thanks so much for being here. Until next time, keep it real, keep it thoughtful, and keep lifting up Black women through research and reflection.